What's happening, folks? Back with another reaction, back with some more Pat Benatar. And we're returning to In the Heat of the Night, 1979. Shout out to the folks who commented on the title track, and a couple of you said you thought it was a top tune. I absolutely agree. And the next tune I haven't reacted to, which is to say I did skip over a couple earlier in the album playlist before I reacted to In the Heat of the Night, because I had already reacted to them as part of the Best Shots Greatest Hits compilation. But yes, the next tune in the playlist is My Clone Sleeps Alone. I'm amused by the phrasing. I'm expecting clone is not literal or in a sci-fi sense, but is an alter ego or a dissociative way to refer to oneself, maybe when you are not having passionate exchanges in the heat of the night, and thus suggesting that maybe that's not the real you, or that's a different side of you, it's a clone of you. So, of course, even if that is the case, there's still no indication of whether this is part of a larger narrative, whether it's seen as a positive thing or a more critical thing. But I suppose if that is the idea, that the clone is just another side of, or a version of the person in a different context, I would imagine it would be seen as less than fully desirable, given that the title of the album is In the Heat of the Night, when passions run high, when emotional and visceral fires are burning. And if you're sleeping alone, then maybe that's a cold, dispassionate version of yourself. So either way, I'll see what I can catch on a first listen and find out if any of that is relevant. This is Pat Benatar, and the song is My Clone Sleeps Alone from her 1979 album In the Heat of the Night.
I know my clone sleeps alone. She's out on her own forever. She's programmed to work hard. She's never profane. She won't go insane, not ever. No feeding, no cancer, on TV's the answer. No father, no mother, she's just like the other. And you know, and I know, my clone sleeps alone.
that, I was really thrown. It was a cheeky way to start the track, like it's this soft and emotional piano and vocals. It wouldn't be a cappella, but really stripped down and sonically minimal tune where, it's almost like one of those, like torch song or, like someone pouring out their melancholy feelings, and then suddenly we hear the drums kick in and the guitar starts ripping some chords and boom, it goes into like an energetic pop rock song. So I like that switch, and I didn't see it coming after the first 45 seconds or so. And yeah, like lyrically, I think on some level I was heading in the right direction, but I think the point being made here is more general. And I think it's maybe a cheeky critique of conformity, of passions being rounded off and restricted or discouraged. And there's a layer about like in heaven where I don't quite know what to do with that. Maybe the idea that if you behave like a clone, where you work hard, you're not profane, you don't fool around, you do what you're supposed to, you're not naughty, you just, go to work, come home and sleep by yourself, and if you do that, you're setting up all the right moral conditions to go to heaven. But it sounds like the argument being made is that that's not really living, that men and women, they pair with each other, they have passions, they have impulses, and they do things where, again, they sleep together or they have passions in the heat of the night. And if we take that away from them in the 80s, which is funny, like, I did a watch along, or like it was a series of riffs of this 80s show called The Master, like available here on YouTube if you're interested. But the point is, there's an episode where one of the characters talks about like being a woman of the 80s and, like, oh, haven't you got to get with it, like, these are new modern times. So again, like more than 40 years later, looking back, it's funny to see and to hear what people thought were the changing mores and attitudes of the 80s. Like, was it a new era where things were going to be notably different? Or seemingly, maybe here, is it the idea that by the 80s, what had made humans and men and women, break out of their shells in the 60s and maybe even still in the 70s, maybe was that being closed off and restricted and discouraged or criticized in the 80s. So yeah, again, if I'm hearing some of these lines right, it sounds like she's saying that there's this increasing push for or expectation or standards of conformity and behaving like a clone where, you don't have a mother and a father, you're not a hot-blooded human, you've been created in a lab to do a certain type of lifestyle, and anything outside of that you're saying or you're being told you're not going to go to heaven, and so on. So again, maybe I'm not reading some of these lines right, and maybe there is something to that, but the point is more narrow or turning in a different direction than I caught it on a first listen. But I do enjoy the use of the idea of a clone to speak about passions and emotions and behavioral expectations, even if I don't know quite how it all pieces together. And as I said, I love the rockin' guitar, which, like, the second half of the tune is what I've come to know that a lot of Benatar's songs do, which is why the opening of this one was so surprising. But I really do enjoy the way it started soft and reflective and a bit emotional, and boom, it's like the lights turned on, someone, ripped a guitar chord, and away we go. So I like the transition of that. Either way, let me know what you think of the tune, and I'll see you for the next one. Peace.